I want to welcome everyone to another edition to the Ball is Leverage podcast. And this is where we tell everybody ball is not your life, but it is leverage to create opportunities for you to shine on and off the court or the pool or the field or wherever you may be playing. And so joining me today is a good friend of mine. Her name is Shay, and we're going to talk about how ball allowed her to create a lot of different opportunities. And I want you guys to take notes because I keep telling you, you do not have to play the sport professionally. You don't have to play the sport in college. You can just take interest in the sport and it can actually open doors for you if you allow it. So, just want to welcome everyone and welcome Nina to this particular
Thank you.
episode in partnership with Cascade Media. So first, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me on, James Setta. You know how I've been a fan of the work that you do for many, many years. It is much needed and much appreciated. So, you and I met through our College Football Moms Network. And, this has just been a long lifestyle for me as a sports mom. My son uh, has played college football he played for 6 years. He was a starting player at UCLA, a wide receiver, and he graduated from UCLA. He played for a season at Oklahoma and earned his graduate degree there. And he also played for one season at Utah. And now he's in a different field altogether, but being a sports mom, it's been such an amazing ride. It's been the highs and the lows. But before I was a sports mom, I was a model and actress. And I worked with a company who provided corporate training videos for many of the major conglomerates. So I've been able to kind of pull all of those different experiences and skills together. And just kind of provide that type of mentorship, that type of advising and consulting to other families, to moms, families, to their girls and boys, the athletes themselves. So that's kind of a little bit of my background, but I'm presently a senior client advisor at Neiman Marcus. And so my work here at Neiman Marcus, as far as being a beauty and style consultant, is another way in which I'm able to connect with different families and just help them in areas that are so important when it comes to imaging, when it comes to having confidence, when it comes to how you present yourself, when it comes to interviewing, when it comes to transitioning for athletes coming out of sports and going into the real work world or entrepreneurship. So it's a little bit about me.
Oh, I love that. So I always like to highlight people who are giving back and pouring into those behind them. And I'm not going to let you be modest because you and I both know you have a podcast. And so one of the opportunities that you created in the world of sports is you have this podcast, and you're
Yes.
always highlighting people who are doing things. I so enjoy the nonprofits and the
Uh-huh.
causes that you highlight. So let's talk about how you used your natural talent that you had before you became a sports mom, and fuse
Mhm.
that with the opportunities that you got once you were a sports mom, because you're interviewing all the peoples. All
Right,
the people. So let's talk
right.
about your podcast. What is it called?
Right, right. Okay. So that is something that I'm so passionate about. And yeah, I could have started with that, but the podcast is the Mama Bear podcast. And naturally, that was birthed out of me just being a mama bear. Over the years, I've become known as Mama Bear because that would kind of be my little thing, my little logo or brand, if you will, on my jerseys and my hats and all. So everybody would see me and they call me Mama Bear. But that's just something that's innate. Being a mother, we're always there to look out for our kids, to protect them, and just making sure that, that the house, the den is good. So I so enjoy my conversations with a lot of the moms that I've met over the years. So I started the Mama Bear podcast as a way of sports moms to pretty much share life from their perspective, supporting their kids. Just seeing sports in a different world, because we naturally see it differently than the average fan, etc. So I started it as a community for us to be able to just talk about those things that matter most to us when it comes to our athletes' health. I'm really big in the mental health world, because I know that if you don't have a healthy mind, it doesn't matter, what your bench press is, doesn't matter what your 40 time is, you are not going to be the best student athlete. So for me, it was important to be able to support people that are working in that area. So I do work with foundations, one in particular, which is Helensky's Hope. And that was born by Kim and Mark Helensky, whose son committed suicide when he was a quarterback at Washington State University. So for me to be able to work with organizations, even Neiman Marcus has contributed to their foundation and fundraising. I always try to shed light on those type of things that matter the most. So I have interviewed Kim Helensky in my podcast. I've had a couple of episodes with a friend of mine, Carrie Hastings. She's a sports psychologist with the Rams organization. Also, people just in general who are there to advise coaches. I talk to moms a lot because I just really want to hear their voice. Like, what is it like, the day to day, the journey? Like, we know it, but a lot of people on the outside don't know it. So I just like to be able to share and for them to hear each other. Because you know how sometimes you think you're in this thing by yourself, and then you hear somebody else that's going through exactly what you're going through, or someone might have an answer or solution to something that you've been struggling with. So for me, that was, part of what the Mama Bear podcast was created to do.
And again, I'm super passionate and I love that you have a focus on mental health because like people outside of sports don't
Mhm.
understand how important it is. I was reading just recently this week, Doug Martin, the player for the 49ers, who was
Yeah.
killed in police custody. Um, his agent and family released a statement. He was having an episode, and they
Mhm.
were trying to get him mental health help. And so
Mhm.
a lot of people look at our sons and daughters as they're playing, as they're
Right.
on TV, and they think, oh, these kids have everything. They got it all
Mhm.
together. They're getting all the
Mhm.
money. They're getting all the opportunities. They're getting all the extra favors. And
Mhm.
so when you talk about things in the Mama Bear's Den, it's important because people need to see that, yeah, they have opportunities, but they're human and
Yes, absolutely.
struggle, and there's no struggle that an ordinary person, because our kids are ordinary people, they just happen to
Mhm.
be playing a sport that people want to watch. But there's
Right.
no struggle that our kids are immune to. They have the
Absolutely.
same service, the same health issues, mental health issues that everyone
Mhm.
else has. And I think you and I both know that for our children, it's harder to acknowledge that they
Yes.
have problems.
Yes. Certainly with student athletes, they're finding that suicide is like the second leading cause, a cause of deaths. And so when you take into consideration that kids are playing in college, and so now for especially, Division I and other divisions too, you're a public figure. And so with social media and all of the expectations that are on you as a student and athlete, and remember, there's the student, not just the athlete. So you really people don't realize how much is placed on those students. And oftentimes, like you said, they're going to be the last to go in and ask for help because they don't want to appear to be weak. They don't want you to think that they have any kind of problems. They don't want the coaches to think that they have any problems. But they have everyday life issues like we do. You're, you lose your grandmother, but you're in school and you got a game coming up this weekend. And so you're dealing with that emotion, that raw emotion. And where do what are you going to do with it if you don't have anybody to talk and advocate for you? They're dealing with grades. They have to keep their grades up, I mean, it's not like I think things have changed a little bit, and sometimes people feel like students don't, or athletes, they don't have to keep up their grades. Maybe they have somebody going in taking tests for them, and I don't know, sitting in class. Well, no, that's not the way things work these days, right? And if you don't maintain your grades, then you're not going to be able to play. So they have to keep up those grades, and just think about it. You have to do the same thing that the average student has to do, but you got to do it and then be on that plane on Friday nights to go to another state to play. And then you don't get home until very late that night or, something crazy, but you still have tests to take. You have to get up in the morning, be at the facility, you got to do your training, you got to go to the treatment, table, then you got to get to class, then you got to sit in meetings. It's a lot, that they have to do, and people take that for granted. And I am just so thankful, just on another subject altogether, that the kids are able to actually earn income now. Because to me, I always viewed it as like a job. And people would say, well, you know what? These kids are getting full scholarships. They don't need any more than that. Well, when you really look at the amount of income, the earnings, the revenue that they are generating, yeah, you can see how they should be a part of that pot. You know what I mean? That pot of gold should kind of be shared, and the education is great. And you're earning that education. Like I said, you have to keep up your grades, but you're bringing in a lot more. And I have always said that there should be a way that that could be more evenly distributed or shared. So,
I laugh because I'm passionate about this issue. But I will say I love that you create space for conversations. You've leveraged sports to build relationships, and then you create space for conversations that are not quite easy to have. Mental health is
right,
not an easy conversation to have, and it is
right.
not for those of us who are in the name, image, and likeness space. Even if you touch on it peripherally, it's not an easy conversation to have because so many people believe that our children should be grateful. They
Right,
should be grateful. And it's not that they aren't grateful. It
right.
really isn't. And at the same time, we look at when we never really truly see all the revenue because we only see what they get from like ticket sales and merch
Mhm.
and TV revenue, but we don't see like, okay, how many thousands of people came into a city
Yes.
and directly infuse
Mhm.
dollars into the local economy. They'd
Mhm.
probably like our kids are worth so much more. So it's just interesting to to hear. And I
Mhm.
hope when people are listening to this podcast, they will know that we do have to do a lot of educating as parents.
We do.
And even though a lot of parents don't. So that's why I'm having you here because you create spaces for conversations to occur, not just in your podcast, but in real life. And that's
Yeah.
important.
Yes, absolutely. And excuse me, I think oftentimes we hear from coaches, we hear from the media, but they're not going to tell all of the stories. They're not going to the picture isn't always painted, exactly as it is. And there's just so much negativity that comes from these little sound bites or, what somebody assumes of someone. So, like we were saying, those pressures that kids are under, you have kids like Kyron Lacey, you know, We don't have to know every single detail, but what we do need to know, because I know it, sometimes there is an assumption because you are a young athlete, and that's not even factoring in backgrounds, race and all of that. Just because you are an athlete, sometimes there is that assumption that you are arrogant, that you may be reckless, that you may not be doing things the right way, and that's completely untrue. And every athlete, it's funny because I know sometimes I may go into something else, but this will pop into my head. You see athletes and we see the stories that we hear about mostly, especially around draft time. You have the athlete who maybe didn't have two parents in the house. You may have the athlete that didn't have the money, and so they needed to figure out how to get food for their sisters and brothers. We have all of these different scenarios of people who don't have the education, people don't have the resources or the sophistication. But you do have a lot of athletes whose parents really do pour into them and who have afforded them the ability to get an education before college. They have etiquette. They do know right from wrong, and so you can't just assume that everyone is one particular way because they are an athlete. And you are going to be in that spotlight, the good and the bad. It's like we love you, and then boy, don't let you do something, a little something, look like you did something, and that's a feature too. So that was one thing that I had to work with my son on, is helping him to understand. Sometimes it's the little things that you say. They will take that little thing and they loop it over and over and over again. And oftentimes it's the negativity that's more sensational than the good stuff. So that was another reason too why I wanted to start this podcast, because I want to talk about what people are doing in the world, on a positive tip. How are we giving back in the community? What are some of these athletes doing to spend time with other kids, to set an example, to go volunteer somewhere? How are they working with their families to bring their families into the fold? Because now they have this platform that is going to allow, other people to be able to eat, as they say, a little bit too. And I really just wanted to highlight more positivity, because there's so much out there that we're doing. We have kids that are scholars and athletes. We have families that are doing tremendous work with foundations in communities that need it the most. Um, you have coaches, we look at Deion Sanders. So many people appreciate what he's bringing to the forefront. Even little things like, okay, when you're on campus, we're not wearing flip-flops. We're not wearing do-rags. Sometimes, you
We're
know,
sitting at the front of the classroom.
yeah, that part. And that's always been a criteria. Like, my son, they were required to sit in the front, but then again, sometimes, things happen. So we have to show those people that are making a difference in our community. So to me, that is one of the beautiful things about having people come on, because, one of my guests will talk to you about being an entrepreneur, being a person who is setting your own pace, because sometimes you're trying to fit into this box, fit into the norm, and maybe the norm is not necessarily for you. And as you and I were talking about earlier, when it comes to athletics, just balling is not life. You know what I mean? The sport is not your life. And then what happens when you don't have that sport? Or what happens after the sport? You have to know who you are. You have to have a plan for life, and you do have to know how to navigate. So those are the things that I really like to focus on with the podcast, and just like you said, in general conversation with people.
And so I want to go back because I don't want Sometimes simple things people gloss over simple.
Mhm.
And so people might listen to this and say, well, she creates conversations. Okay, that is one of the biggest opportunities.
Mhm.
Simply creating conversation is never simple. Not just creating conversation, but creating safe spaces where people can open up and be
Yes.
transparent and talk because there are so many people who have misconceptions about
Mhm.
sports families and
Mhm.
athletes and what they go through and how they navigate life. And until athletes feel safe enough to start talking and telling the truth about what
Right.
they really experience,
Mhm.
there will still be destruction. Follow. I love how people they say, well, most athletes end up broke, but like I want you guys to let that click in your
Mhm.
head that
Mhm.
most of them will end up broke. There's
Mhm.
something wrong in there's a
Mhm.
piece missing. And
Mhm.
so having people come and talk about the unsexy parts of athletics is super
Right.
important because most people experience the unsexy.
Mhm.
Like we act like
Mhm.
the numbers are, they people act like the numbers are not the numbers. Like, okay, listen,
Right.
less
Yeah,
than 10% of all high school students are going to go on
that part.
to
That
play
part.
in college. Less than
Mhm.
3% of all college students, and I'm being generous with the percentages, are going to go on and play any sport at any type of professional manner. So
Mhm.
let's just know that the majority of athletes are going to have the unsexy, painful experience.
That's
And
true.
so we have,
That's true.
I admire those of us who create spaces for
Yes.
having real conversations because
Mhm.
that's not an easy thing to do.
It's not. And you
Um,
have to realize that, there are so many things that are beyond your control. My son played in college and he was a heck of a player. And we're thinking, okay, junior year, he got through junior year. Okay, thank God, he's still healthy and all is good. And just before his senior year, injury, then a second injury. And so everybody that just knew he was going to be on that TV screen on Sundays, you don't know what's going to happen at any given time, so you really do have to be prepared for the other, and to make sure that you're well-rounded, because that was one of the things that was really important to me with my son. For sure, you need to get your education and just get that degree, even though nowadays you don't have to have a degree to be successful. But when you have that degree, it gives you the advantage, in my opinion, to be able to create success for yourself. Because again, you're sitting in classroom, you're going through, I mean, nothing replaces life experience, or having a great idea that just takes off. And now we do have social media, so that's another thing. You could just do something, all of a sudden you're a star. But to me, to be able to sit down, formulate sentences, to be able to write a paper, to be able to think outside the box, to be able to have a schedule for yourself. A lot of the things that, being in college and the studies and the different um, uh, exposure, I believe that just helps to make you much more well-rounded. So, I'm always going to advocate for education as well as the other thing, the sport, because again, like I was saying, you don't know at any given moment when you don't have that sport to fall back on. And then where do you go from there? And there's just so many things. I may jump all over the place, because things come into my mind. Just about an hour ago, I was working with one of the Rams players and his lady friend. And when we're talking about financing, he's buying fragrances, four fragrances, and there was one that she really wanted, and it was fabulous. And so it was like, okay, baby, you want that? Here you go. So I rang everything up and rang that one up. That one fragrance was $1,300. People spend they buy it all day long. But this young lady And I really give her credit for it. Now, I'm not saying that she shouldn't have had it, but she stopped and she said, wow, she said, that's an expensive date. And then she said, you know what? Because she was already getting two others and he was getting two. She said, I'm going to wait on this. She said, because not that I couldn't, and don't like this fragrance, but I just don't feel right. She said something about that $1,300. And she looked at him. She said, boy, I could see your financial advisor like right now. And that just made me think about the fact that sometimes people are not thinking, and this is his girlfriend, but I have guys that come through here with the boys, with the entourage, and you know,
Oh, not buying the entourage fragrances.
you no, I mean, you never
Oh,
know. You
I
want one,
know they
oh
are,
man,
but that
I
just
don't.
breaks my heart. They don't.
Yeah. And so, and then in this world of luxury that we're in, yes, fragrances will cost you $1,300. And so you're just popping it off like it's nothing. But at the end of the day, you got to look at your bank account and figure, okay, if I do this often and I'm going out to party and I'm, buying clothes, I got a car, I got the ice on my neck. It's like you that's where the broke comes in, or the sitting back and thinking, dag, I shouldn't have done that. So I just say all that to say I appreciated that young lady. And as a mother, I'm thinking, okay, I like the fact that she was thinking about, maybe I'm not going to do this right now, because he was the one that was buying it. And I think he appreciated it too, because he didn't fight it. But those are all the things that these athletes have to think about. And he's a pro, so he could have bought it like easily.
And so I love that because we spent a lot of time talking about the podcast and the
Mhm.
opportunities that you create, like for people to talk and share stories. But another opportunity that you've created for yourself adjacent to the world of sports is styling the stars. You-
Yes,
you're
yes.
styling the peoples.
And
And
I love
I
that.
think that is so precious because I do not
Uh-huh.
have a stylish bone in my body. Or it might, you tell me it's there. I just haven't figured out how to bring the style out yet.
Right.
So there's hope for me. But how did you just like how does it feel? Like what's a typical day like styling the stars?
Um, sometimes it's a star, a celebrity, we'll say, and then sometimes it's just the grandmother, that lives in their neighborhood, and she's got to go to her kids, her grandchild's recital, or she's getting ready to go on vacation. It's a little bit of everybody. So for me, I treat everyone like a person, and nobody is more important. Like sometimes, I'm running around, for our celebrity clientele, and doing the most, and sometimes they're doing the most. However, it's all good, it's all fun, but the important thing is that you really do treat every person like they are the most important person in the room. And you do have to look at everyone as an individual. So for me, a typical day is really just starting off by listening to what people need. So I just love to smile and I love to greet everybody, whether or not you're shopping with me or not. I see little kids, I smile, I say hello. I see people that are just passing through. They're not really trying to shop. And then the other folks. So, for me, it's important to make everybody feel welcome and valued. And then to find out, like I was saying to you earlier, I don't normally ask, can I help you with something? I usually ask, hello, how are you? What brings you in today? So that I can know what it is they need or what it is that they want. So I'm primarily in the world of beauty. And of course, fragrances is in that department, and the skincare and a little bit of everything, color, the lipsticks and blush and all of that good stuff. But I do sell throughout the store, and I've been here with Neiman's for about 15 years. So it's just a matter of finding out what people want. I'm advising on a regular basis on skincare. People are constantly coming in and saying, okay, my skin is dry. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do with these wrinkles? I have this dark spot. What do you have for dark spots? What do you have for this? What do you have for that? Or sometimes people are coming in and they just want a beautiful new wedding fragrance, so I know the fragrances, I know the notes, I know what they make you feel, oftentimes. And that's my job, is just to guide them, to help them find something that just really makes them not just look good, but makes them feel good. So I'm introducing people to fragrances throughout the day, most of the time, introducing them to a great eye cream that's going to help smooth those lines, wrinkles, to help to brighten, to help, kind of stimulate and get your cells energized. And then, we'll walk over to shoes and we'll look at shoes, whatever the occasion, if it's Christian Louboutin, if it's Chanel, if it's Prada, if it's a sneaker. And I love football season because we have moms that come in and I'm like, okay, no, you need to get those right there. Wait, what color is your team? Oh, we got a bad blue shoe. We got the red, we got, whatever it is that you need. So I enjoy doing that. Um, like I said, I sell everything in the store. A lot of my clients will call and they'll make an appointment with me, or they might call me and say, hey, I got to show up somewhere. I need this, I need that. I'm looking for a specific, type of dress. So I'm looking for something. So I set up fitting rooms a lot for them to come in. I try to make sure that we got the shoes, that's going to go with the outfit, pick out the, different selections of outfits, and just work with them to make sure that they look right, and that we work with their lifestyle, their comfort level, and then their budget. That's a big thing.
I'm going to be respectful of your time because I tell you I would only keep you 30, 45 minutes.
Mhm.
But I do want to go back to the spirit of the podcast, which
Yes,
is
yes, yes,
using ball as leverage. And
yes.
one of the things that you do, well, two of the things that you do beautifully. The first one that I'll talk about is the podcast
Mhm.
and allowing people the space to
Yeah,
have real conversations.
yeah.
That is something that doesn't happen enough in our world. People do
Mhm.
need to understand what we're really going through as parents of athletes and athletes themselves. And the other thing that you do, I know you style them and make them look beautiful and handsome and smell really good.
Mhm.
But for me, that's not just style. One
Mhm.
of the things that athletes don't get to do very often is
Mhm.
control their own narrative. And
Right.
one of the things that being properly styled
Mhm.
does is
Mhm.
allow you to control, even if you
Mhm.
don't know it, it
Mhm.
allows you to control what people say about you. Because you and I
Right.
both know when the athlete and his mom or his wife or his girlfriend, when they
Mhm.
come in appropriate attire,
Mhm.
the conversation is very different than
Yes,
when they don't show up in appropriate attire.
for
And
sure.
so, very few people in the sports world, even people who are sports adjacent,
Mhm.
photojournalists and um, print journalists, and all of the people that write the stories, very few of them allow athletes to craft a narrative that is true. So
Right.
much of the time, athletes are reacting to a narrative that is
Right.
being forced upon them. And so I do want when people are listening to this podcast, one of the ways that you leverage ball is to help athletes and their families and their significant others control the narrative about who they
Mhm.
are and how they prefer to show up. And that's powerful. And they probably don't realize that that's one of the things that you help them do.
Absolutely. And a lot of times I just come from a place of being a mom. So, when mothers call me and they say, okay, look, my son, maybe they are meeting with a brand, that's looking for them to represent them. If they are looking, if they're transitioning from the world of sports and going into a business environment. I do have families who will call me and say, okay, well, my son needs this, my son needs that, getting married. And I always try to, again, look at what they want to project. And I also talk to them about how you want to be seen. Like we were talking before, how you walk into the room makes all the difference. So first and foremost, you want to be confident. And I believe in comfort too, in that confidence. So it's just about finding out where are you in life? How do you see yourself? How do you want people to see you? So those are kind of like the first questions that I ask. And then I can know what styles I need to pick out for you. Make sure that you come in and you feel comfortable. And I usually, when I'm speaking to people, I say, okay, love, okay, love, I use that word a lot because I almost sometimes I feel like I'm talking to my son when there are these like, Rams and, different guys that come through here sometimes off season. They're training, with a place up in Calabasas and they come through here and I just really try to help them get into something that is going to make them look, if it's a professional look that you're looking for, if it's a casual look, because you're going somewhere and you just kind of want to look neat, you want to look smart, but you don't want to be too underdressed or too overdressed. We just identify what brands really do, represent that style. And I just really try to make it more like, as opposed to somebody that's just really selling you something, it's somebody that really understands your lifestyle. And I want to help you to be able to achieve that presentation, whatever it is. So, sometimes it's just the athlete, that comes through. A lot of times it's athletes that they already know what they want. They'll come in and they have an idea, but they just don't know what we have in the store. They don't know the brands necessarily. So sometimes I just have to steer them, in a different direction. Sometimes I work with the athletes and their wives, and they kind of know, Aaron Donald's come through here, and I just love him. He's such a teddy bear, just amazing man and his wife Erica, so she'll come in and she'll be like, okay, Nina, we want this, or he should have this, or we're going to this kind of affair. And, they basically will tell you what it is that they need. I'm just here to facilitate. But to be able to work with somebody who really needs and they don't have that experience, they don't have the existing wardrobe, or they're kind of new in the space, for me, that is a treat because, like I said, I just look at it as I would with my son. And, he came from college and playing ball and started having the interview. And I don't think at first, he wasn't sure what I was saying. Or sometimes it's hard to take it from your mama. I don't know what it is, but I'm like, listen, trust me, I do this. I've been doing this forever. But eventually he started kind of taking my advice on the suit choices, the colors, the ties, or, what kind of shirt, he was going to put underneath the suit, and the shoes. And we just talked about a lot of things. We, certainly away from working in the store and style consulting, we talked about just presentation, how you communicate with people, um, learning how to interview. I mean, yeah, I try to cover all bases as much as I can, and I do have a tendency to treat folks, like they're my son.
That's
You
That
know,
is so
and
cool.
it's funny because I don't work with women as much other than like the moms, and I work with women in business in general, but I don't get a lot of the young female athletes coming through here, interestingly enough. It would be great to see more of them. But I will tell you, I do work with organizations like the Boys and Girls Club. You know, we do like a tea talk and uh, take advantage of opportunities to get together with teens to help them to learn, about, good posture, how to dress, how to sit and hold conversations and, helping them get ready for proms and things like that. So I love that too.
I am so excited that we got an opportunity to talk.
Me too.
Sometimes people underestimate the value of simple.
Yeah.
Because I've learned in corporate America, you want to make something simple, it could take millions of dollars to make something simple. Simple is not just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. Simple is oftentimes quite hard when you're dealing with people. And so
Mhm.
ha- creating the space for having the real conversations,
Right.
allowing athletes to like the fact that you ask them, how do you want to be perceived? Like
Mhm.
so many times, no one
Mhm.
asks our babies, how
Yeah.
do you want to be perceived? They're just
Yeah.
out there writing a whole story about them and they
True.
have no idea what's really going on. And so the fact that you ask and you allow them to go out and again, shape their own story. Um,
Yeah.
I will never discount those things because that's two of the things that overwhelmingly, if you look at 99.9% of the world of athletics, or that's
Mhm.
athletics adjacent, they're
Right.
simply not asking those questions. They're not
Right.
creating that space. And so I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us. I do want to ask a couple questions as we close.
Of
If
course.
someone wanted to listen to the podcast,
Uh-huh.
how could they find the podcast?
All right. So again, it is the Mama Bear podcast. Our house is In the Den with Mama Bear on YouTube. And I do put shorts up on Instagram. My Instagram, sometimes it would be on Nina Shay 301, which is my personal. And there is the Mama Bear podcast with an S, the Mama Bear podcast page on Instagram. And then, sometimes on Facebook, I'll share, of course, with our college football moms page, and then also just on my personal, which is again, Nina Shea 301. But it is the Mama Bear podcast, and some things are coming soon. You know that I work and I'm new in these spaces also. So I'm just looking forward to being able to do more and connect with people like you. And I just want to say thank you for real. You said thank you to me for coming on, but I really do thank you for asking me to come on, and then for just sharing that same passion for bringing necessary information, to families, for educating people, sharing good stuff, and just kind of being in that space for our community, because we need it. We need more sharing and true looking out for our people, our kids, and our families. So I do thank you for that.
And last question.
Yes.
If someone wanted to be styled by Nina, how does that work? How could they be styled by you?
All right, so I'm at Neiman Marcus in the Valley in Los Angeles, but I do work through other Neiman Marcus locations also. So, sometimes I may work with a client in Beverly Hills and out of state, that's coming soon. But if you did want to reach me, my email, we can, put that up in your captions. But I'm at Neiman Marcus, and now we have been acquired by Saks Global. So my email address is
Oh,
Nina dot Rice, which is my other name, Nina dot Rice at Saks.com. Um, And that's pretty much where you can reach me
I
right
love
now.
it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love
Yes.
it. Again, I want to thank you for just gracing us with your knowledge and your presence for this particular episode of the Ball is Leverage podcast. And for those people who are listening, just want to remind you that this is a partnership with Cascade Sports. And if you are a former athlete, if you're the parent of an athlete, if you're sports adjacent, I want you to ask yourself, what can ball do for you? Thank you for
Mhm.
joining us. And we'll see you guys next week.
All right.
This program is brought to you by the City of Fountains Coaches Association.